This is my daughter, Zaina. She's 2. I was outside with her the other day, and she did something that most of us, whether we have children or not, have probably seen a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old or even a 4-year-old do. She heard a noise coming from the sky, and she looked up very excitedly and said, "Mama, airplane." And I looked up and I mimicked her excitement. But in that same moment, it occurred to me that there is likely not one child in Gaza who hears a noise from the sky, who looks up and is excited by what they see. The first time I entered the Gaza Strip, I was immediately struck by how dystopian it feels, thanks in large part to the unmanned aerial vehicles loitering in Gaza's skies. More commonly called drones, or zanana in Arabic, these aircraft have been a near constant presence since the Second Intifada. This means that these drones, used by Israel for surveillance and extrajudicial execution, have defined the experiences of every child born in Gaza after 2005. If you were to read only popular and political discourses about drones, you would find conversation about their capacity for precision targeting, their accuracy, about their ability to protect soldiers. But what these accounts don't mention are the brutal deaths and injuries that they cause, the daily trauma. They provide no moment of peace. Whether you are deep inside a building, like a hospital, where I was when I recorded this, or in a deep sleep, you always hear them. Zanana are a constant reminder that not even the skies in Gaza are free. The Gaza Strip has been subjected to a nearly 20-year military blockade that has consistently restricted the entry of life-saving supplies. Over the past few years, human rights organizations have sounded the alarm, arguing that with Egypt's complicity, Israel has turned Gaza into an open-air prison. The situation over the past year has deteriorated to the point of catastrophe. Israeli airstrikes have targeted residential towers, schools, bakeries, hospitals, refugee camps, tents. 90% of the population is displaced, some more than 10 times, and is increasingly squeezed into a smaller and smaller area that Israel has unironically called a safe zone. By the time I entered Gaza in March, most of the population had been displaced to Rafah, a city that once held 300,000, now held over 1 million. The infrastructure did not exist to support this influx of people. Most families lived in tents made of flour sacks sewn together. Water was only available a few days per week. Those who lived in the tent encampment at Rafah Mawasi had the added displeasure of setting up on sand, having to contend daily with that sand, with wind, bugs, lack of toilets, lack of privacy, drones overhead, naval shots from ships, and tragically and most horrifically, airstrikes. After October 7, Israel tightened its grip on Gaza and vowed to squeeze the life out of the population. Nearly instantly, it blocked almost all aid from entering the region. Prior to this aggression, roughly 500 to 600 trucks were entering Gaza per day, which was still not enough to meet the needs of the population. And that number, by November, had dwindled down to 50, and it has only gone down since. When I passed through the Rafah crossing, I drove by hundreds of trucks filled to the brim with desperately needed clothing, food, sanitary supplies, medical hardware, just waiting, sitting idle, unable to enter. Largely due to Egypt's cooperation, and Israel's bureaucratic red tape that hindered the entry of those supplies. And what about the trucks that did get in? Allow me to introduce you to the glidoscope. This is a tool used for visualizing the airway. The key component to the glidoscope is the laryngoscope. This is what is inserted into the patient's throat. Without the laryngoscope, the device is useless. On May 2nd, I walked into the office of friend and director of primary health care, Dr. Musa. I noticed a machine in the corner of his office that wasn't there before. "What's that?" I asked him. "Oh, that," he responded with a chuckle. He had received 6 brand new glidoscopes, but the laryngoscope was missing from each one. Now, remember how I said that without the laryngoscope, the device is useless? Dr. Musa turned that useless device into a coffee stand. As the shipment of these devices passed through Israeli security, someone cut an exact laryngoscope-sized hole from every single box, and they removed the handle. To me, this speaks to the heart of what it means to practice medicine under Israeli occupation. On a good day, doctors in Gaza struggle against enormous odds. On a good day, they are already dealing with old, outdated, broken, unavailable, imperfect, taped together equipment. But during a genocide, when the hospitals themselves have been subject to relentless attack, when doctors are being kidnapped, tortured, and murdered, when the occupying power has complete control over who or what goes in and out, impossible. Consider the impossibility that Dr. Mohammed endured in the neonatal intensive care unit in Emirati Hospital. He was the director of the NICU. In February, he was faced with 3 sick babies, 1 set of twins from one family and a single child from the other, all 3 needing ventilators, but the hospital only had 2. He had to decide which 2 babies to treat and which baby would die. Despite all of the horrors that he endured in this genocide, all the pain that he had witnessed, all of the loss that he himself had suffered, he told me that it was this decision alone that made him cry. Even when the equipment is available, the parts are insufficient. Typically, staff will use a single-use tube which connects patient to ventilator, providing the air to help them breathe. Staff will replace that tube for every new patient because bacteria can get stuck in there, which increases the chances of spreading infection. This NICU ran out of replacement tubes very early, so for months they had been washing, not sterilizing, washing and reusing the tubes that they had left. Now, Dr. Mohammed originally lived in Han Yunis. He brought me there to show me the destruction left in the wake of Israel's recent land incursion, to show me what would happen to Rafah if the Israelis were to invade. We went on May 5th. The city was turned to rubble. Homes left standing had the fronts completely sheared off, making them look like apocalyptic dollhouses. Especially distressing was the destruction to the Nasser Hospital compound, where every single building was damaged. It was in front of this building, the dialysis building, that rescuers discovered mass graves. Inside the hospital, Israeli soldiers graffitied the walls, smashed every single incubator. They smashed every single screen. They tore down fixtures. They cut wires from equipment, and they set the building on fire. We are talking about a small strip of land that has been forced into abject poverty and controlled by a multi-billion-dollar military empire. And that empire withholds and destroys life-giving and life-saving technologies as part of its broader strategy to eliminate the Palestinian population. For nearly 20 years, Palestinians in Gaza have been subjected to a permanent state of exception, where their human rights have consistently been denied. There is a long and documented history of Israel using technology as a tool of oppression and violence against Palestinians, not just in Gaza, but throughout all occupied Palestinian territories, from the 65-kilometer high-tech barrier that was constructed along Gaza's border in 2021 at the cost of $1.1 billion to the biometric and surveillance technologies monitoring Palestinian movement at checkpoints and beyond. And credible reports have emerged that Israel is using AI-enabled systems to generate kill lists, yet another tool used to exacerbate the dehumanization of Palestinians and to deepen state violence. That Israel would prevent the entry of life-saving supplies into Gaza, or deliberately destroy medical equipment, or use AI-enabled weapons to generate targets, they're all interconnected. They all live under the umbrella of settler colonialism and European imperialism. And the idea of a Jewish national state, one that displaces Palestinians from their homeland, was imported into Palestine from Europe. In order to truly understand the Israeli state and its actions towards Palestinians, we have to view it for what it is: a settler colonial project that occupies and aims to uproot and eliminate the local population. So where does that leave Palestinians? It leaves them with the moral and legal right to resist. And for them, that includes armed resistance. And where does that leave us? With the moral and ethical responsibility to show up for them, to tell the truth, to demand an immediate ceasefire. We must push for an end to the occupation. We must demand that all borders open immediately. We must create a just peace. Thank you.